Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you find yourself today. It's been a pleasure coming your way one more time. As we promised last week, that we are going to be here today, same time, to continue the discussion we started. Unfortunately, when we were ready at 3 o'clock, for some reason we got on and the computer shut down and decided to restart for some strange reason. So that is why we were late in starting today, but I am so sorry for us being 10 minutes late. Anyway, we are still going to have the program today. It's going to be an exciting one. We're still talking about the cancer that has plagued or is still plaguing Africa as a continent. First of all, I want to welcome you to Leadership Academy. My name is Nana Osei Bonsu Jr. of Africa International Organization and Certo Leadership International. And as usual, a disclaimer: creativity and inventions are not done by the color of one's skin, but by an educated mind. I want to repeat: creativity and inventions are not done by the color of one's skin, but by an educated mind. So let us educate ourselves in order to create and invent. I want to encourage you all to also share the link. It is important that we share the link and invite friends, loved ones to be a part of this discussion, because we are going to have an exciting one. And as I said last week, the issue of corruption faces all of us in Africa. And it's quite an endemic. And so if we have the opportunity to discuss it, I would want to encourage all of us to be a part of the discussion. The link is being posted on our Facebook page. As I said last week, we are transitioning from Facebook to YouTube. So we are live on YouTube. If you want to join the discussion, you can hit the link posted on our Facebook page and join the discussion. On this platform, we don't insult. On this platform, we discuss to share ideas. On this platform, we make sure that whatever we discuss here would not be an issue of argument, but it's going to be an issue of discussion. And as we always say, discussion is when you judge all and share ideas and discuss your opinions, you table your opinions and respectfully disagree or agree with anybody who has a dissenting opinion. And that's what we do on this platform. We don't entertain insults on this platform because, again, we've never witnessed any insults solving problems. And we have magnitude of problems on the continent of Africa. But we believe that if we are going to give ourselves to discussions and give ourselves to education, we should be able to find solutions to the problems of Africa. And as I said last week, we're still continuing to talk about the effects of corruption. Last week, we discussed what corruption is. And I said that it is the denigration of life by the poor mind. That is corruption. When people have to bring life to a certain level of denigration, where it has no dignity and respect for life and property. That is corruption. So it is not just a matter of somebody taking bribes alone. It's also a matter of when justice is not prevailing in our system, when the right thing is not being done in our system to reward those who are doing well and punish those who are not doing well, because that is what the system is all about. And as I said, we are also going to be discussing the premise on which some people base their argument that the African culture, the African tradition of giving as one incentive that prepares the ground for corruption. And we'll be looking at that as we go along with the discussions. We're also hoping to bring some resource persons to discuss some of these issues with us, those who are very knowledgeable and in depth in the things of corruption in Africa. But in the meantime, we are still talking about the effects of corruption in Africa. And as we discussed last week, if you look at the amount of money as it was indicated in the Mbeki report, that about $50 billion a year is siphoned out of the continent of Africa. And we spoke about the fact that if you take a look at schools under trees, so classroom-less schools, no resources, no educational materials for the kids to study, roads, messed up roads, hospitals with no beds, no equipment, lack of infrastructure, and all these things going on the continent of Africa. It tells you that something is wrong. And what is that something which is wrong? It is not poverty. We spoke about it last week. It is not poverty. It's not poverty. Well, it is poverty, but it is not what we think poverty is. It is not lack of resources. It is not lack of resources, because if we come to think about it, the most resourced continent in the world is Africa. And if it is lack of resources, which it's creating the problem, then how did we get 50 billion to be stolen from the continent every year? If poverty is lack of resources, then how do we get 50 billion to be stolen from the continent every year? So it tells you it is not lack of resources. And we went further to explain that poverty is in the mind. It is the lack of understanding of human existence. And it defines everything by material gains. That is poverty. When you lack the understanding of human existence and you have to define everything or your existence by material gains, then you're poor. Then you have a mind of poverty. And so if we are going to tackle the issue of corruption, the issue of poverty on the continent of Africa, then we have to start from our mindset. We have to start from our mindset, but we are not going to go there today, because we're going to talk about the issues before we go on to the solutions. You know, so I was reading something about one of the illustrious sons of Africa, the former president of Tanzania. And if you look at some of the things he did in Tanzania, it tells you how much corruption, the cancer of corruption is eaten into the fabric of our beautiful continent. Because this man, Magufuli, did a lot in Tanzania without going outside to borrow money. All he did was to clean up the corruption within Tanzania. And after cleaning up the corruption within Tanzania, he was able to recoup money to the state and began developing the country with the money he recouped from the corrupt practices of government officials, of foreign expatriates, and what have you, to develop the country out of the monies he recouped from those corrupt practices. So one of the things it tells us is that if we are able to see this leakage of $50 billion being siphoned from the coffers or from the continent every year, you can imagine the things we can do. One, we'll be able to revamp our educational system. Talking about education, not schooling. We'll be able to build infrastructure, provide resources for our educational sector. We'll be able to provide hospitals, beds for our hospitals. We'll be able to provide equipment for our hospitals. We'll be able to build schools for the children to learn. And so what I want us to be thinking about now is whenever you walk through your city, your town, your village, and you see lack of infrastructure, you see the problems facing that particular community, think about the fact that if we have leaders who have foresight and believes in humanity and believes that leadership is service to their community and to their generation, they should be able to seal those leakages of $50 billion going out of your community or your country or your continent or my continent, to be able to build a future for this generation and generations to come. Look, in the course of researching into some of these issues, I spoke to people and the pictures they paint is bleak. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's bleak. But I want to believe that as we still have life, we should be able to turn this around. I have 100% hope. As Dr. Du Bois stated in his poem, said the only possible death is to lose belief in this truth. That is the only possible death. And so long as we have life, we should hope and believe in the truth that we are a dynamic, progressive beings. And that when we set our minds to do something, to progress, when we set our minds to develop something, we should be able to, and we will be able to do it. And so all we need on that continent of Africa is leadership. When leadership shows up, things will turn around. I was listening to the speech by Chakwera during Magufuli's funeral, and I was so excited. He said, they said no African country can develop their community or their country without getting loans. Little did they know Magufuli was coming. Little did they know Magufuli was coming. And so that gives me hope that one day Magufuli will pop up on the continent of Africa, in every country of the continent of Africa, and begin to change things and turn things around. And stop us from bleeding from the cancer of corruption, which has left millions dying out of corruption. Come to think about it. People are losing their lives out of the corruption. I have lost friends just because they don't have beds in the hospitals to accommodate them. They don't have beds in the hospitals to give them a place to stay in the hospital to receive treatment. And it's not just the physical death, but the dying of dreams. Because there are no opportunities, because of lack of leadership, and because of corruption, there are no opportunities given to every member or every person of our community to be able to develop their gifts and to serve their generations. And so when you think about corruption, when you think about that cancer, when you think about that canker, what it's doing to the continent of Africa, robbing kids of their future, robbing kids of their parents, robbing people of their loved ones, making people hopeless, making people want to leave the continent. And then you begin to ask yourself, why? Why do we have corruption, so much corruption on the continent of Africa? Why is thievery going on the continent of Africa, even in the corridors of power? People who are supposed to be serving are rather serving themselves, serving their interests. And then it tells you that it is due to our lack of understanding of principles, our lack of understanding of leadership, our lack of understanding of the value of life will lead to corrupt practices. You see, sometimes we talk about the cop who is taking 10 cedis or 5 shilling or 5 kwacha, whatever your currency is on the continent of Africa. And anytime we think about corruption, that's the first thing that comes into our minds. And even in the international community categorizes police officers, the police force, the corrupt police officers in the world, the corrupt police forces in the world. And it always finds African countries within those categories. You see, that is where the international community wants you to focus your attention. But then the corruption itself happens within the international transactions. It happens within the corridors of power. The corruption happens within the continent and outside of the continent to aid the corruption in the continent or on the continent. When the Western world, through their dubious means, would have people in power so they can steal from their countries or from the continent for them. So when we talk about corruption, it's not just about the cop taking 5 cedis or 2 cedis or 1 cedi or 5 shillings or 5 kwacha or whatever the currency is. Those are the ripples of the major corruption occurring in the country. So the country don't even have enough money to pay their police officers. And so the police officers cannot survive on the salaries they receive every month. So the police officers kind of corruption, is the least you could think of when it comes to corruption on the continent of Africa. When people who have been voted into offices are taking percentages of money before they allow even investors to invest into the country. And some investors will refuse to pay the percentages, and so they will pack up and leave. So you think about job losses in the communities when you think about corruption. And then you also think about putting square pegs in round holes when you think about corruption. When people are offered businesses or jobs for something they have no idea. They offer concessions to people, to friends and families, to cronies who have no idea of what they are doing. So they would fix the road today, come 3 days, the road is messed up again. These are the effects of corruption. And our leaders are not thinking. Our political managers are not thinking. And you see, when you think about poverty rather runs within the circles of those who have enormous resources. That is the irony of this whole saga. Poverty runs within the circles of those who have the enormous resources you could think of. When you think about people like Mobutu Sese Seko, his actions were due to poverty, a lack of understanding of life, and wants to define his existence by material gains. You are sick if you think of life that way. And so nothing will satisfy you. You become greedy. You want to grab and grab and grab and grab, and you don't care how you grab. You don't care whose you grab. You don't care what you grab. You keep grabbing. So long as it satisfies your ego, it satisfies your demonic ideas of life. That is what poverty does. Poverty is not the child who is sitting in the village who cannot find food to eat. Poverty is that politician who is stealing money upon monies from the coffers of the state and is still not satisfied with how much he has stolen or she has stolen and keeps stealing. That is poverty. You have a mind of poverty. When you think that stealing from the state, stealing from the people, stealing from the nation is going to make your life better, you are you are a sorrowful person. If you think that stealing from the state is going to define who you are, is going to define your existence, then I'm sorry. You're the most sorrowful person I've ever come across. So when we talk about corruption, we're talking about the people who lack the understanding of life. They lack the value of life. And unfortunately, these are the people we have voted into offices. These are the people we have given power to run the affairs of our nation, power to manage the resources of our continent, or power to mismanage the resources of our continent. So if you don't even know what you're doing in office, and you don't have the decency and the dignity to say that I don't know what I'm doing here, so let me step down for somebody else who knows what he or she is about to take over, that is corruption. That is corruption. Because in the first place, you don't even understand your role in office. For you to even understand the value of life that is being lost due to your inaction and your incompetence. And so if you understand that your incompetence is causing loss of lives, visions are being shattered because of your incompetence, and you value human life, what you would do is to step back and allow somebody who understands how to run the affairs of the nation or that community to be able to run it, to bring a hope and vision alive to that community. And if you don't have that understanding, then you're corrupt. If all you think about is power, so you want to hold on to power, then you're corrupt. I don't care if no money is exchanging hands. I don't care if you're not taking any bribes. I don't care if you're not taking any back kicks. They got so many names given to it. But if a position has been given to you, if you have been given the mandate to manage the resources of the community, and you have no clue, you have no idea what you're doing, and you're still holding on to that office, you are part of the problem. You're part of the cancer. You're part of the corruption we're talking about. And so I want to entreat our friends, our loved ones, our families. Let us begin to wake up. Let us begin to think. Let's start thinking about the people we even give our mandate to in the running of the affairs of our communities. Let's begin to think about them. Are they performing? Are their actions enhancing the community? Or it is diminishing the community? Are they holding on to power by hook or crook? Are they holding on to power by any means necessary? These are the corrupt people we need to weed out of our communities. Or better still, weed them out of office. Because until we do so, we cannot fight or confront this cancer on the continent. And if we're not able to deal with the cancer on the continent, which has eaten into the minds of our people, and especially those who have been voted into offices, I was saddened when I heard of some of our politicians defending an amount given to somebody on the basis of a gift. Jesus Christ. If you really care about the people, then you come to understand that somebody is influencing his way to either acquire a business or to acquire a concession by means of gifts. And you defend this, then I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What kind of people we are giving our mandates to? What kind of people we are empowering to run the affairs of our communities? So when we look at the effects, all that is happening on the continent of Africa rests on only one thing: lack of leadership. Because if leadership shows up, corruption will be corrected. And like I said, Magufuli has taught us that when leadership shows up, you can correct corruption. You can cure that cancer. Because he did it. He showed us the way. And he's made us know that the effects of corruption, not just bribery, but putting square pegs in round holes, by giving jobs to people who have no idea of what they're doing just because they are friends and families. It's the fact that it will diminish the glory of every country or its people or a continent. And so when he came into power, the first thing he started doing was to tackle those issues. I read somewhere he went to offices. And when people are not performing right there and then, you get fired. He reduced his salary. That is leadership. When you realize that what is going on does not make sense, you start with yourself. Constitutional amendments. When you look at the Constitution and it's given so much power to an individual. When you look at the Constitution and you begin to ask yourself, who were the so-called scholars who sat to put this Constitution together? You see corruption even within the Constitution that is supposed to guide and direct the country. You see corruption right there. Why? Because scholars who have no understanding of life and property were put together to write that nonsense to guide a country or a people. I'm trying to bring our minds to the effects of corruption. So when these corrupt minds meet and they write a corrupt agenda for the nation, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? We need to sit up. We need to wake up, Africa. Like I said, the picture looks gloom. picture does not look good. It looks very gloomy. The light is diminishing day in and day out. Hopelessness is staring at people in the face. But I just want to encourage ourselves, so long as we have life. Again, as Dr. Du Bois said, the only possible death is to lose belief in this truth. Simply because the great end comes slowly, because life is long. Anytime we look and we cannot see a glimmer of hope, I want us not to lose hope, but let us tap into the fact that as humans as we are, when we begin to shape our minds in the direction of progress and development, when we begin to educate ourselves, when we begin to educate our minds and start thinking positively, we should be able to turn around Africa's situation. And I always also use Rwanda as an example. Whoever thought about 30 years ago, whoever dreamt, who thought, who even envisaged that Rwanda will be one of I call it the beacon of hope on the continent of Africa. We never dreamt about it. And so I just want us to encourage ourselves. Let's tap into that hope which is sleeping within us, because I know people are giving up hope. And these are the effects of corruption on the continent of Africa. So when we talk about corruption, let us not equate that to the fact that it's only the cops who are taking money, or it's only bribery, which is corruption. It goes bigger. It's way bigger than just that. We have the ostentatious corruption and the corruption for survival going on in Africa. Those who are corrupt to feed the ostentatious life, and those who are corrupt to make ends meet, just to live their daily lives. Just to live their daily lives. So they take one city, one kwacha, 1 shilling somewhere, 1 CFA francs somewhere. And that's all we see. But we can't see somebody who is hanging on to power, who has no idea, that incompetent person hanging on to power, who has no idea whatsoever he is in that office for. And yet at the end of the year, or at the end of the 4-year, or at the end of the whatever 5-year term, they come back to us and buy our votes, buy our mandates by giving us peanuts so we can give them the mandate again to go sit in that office and do nothing. Let's begin to wake up. Let's begin to think about some of these things. The lack of leadership. The 50 billion which is being stolen from your community, from my community. The dreams being shattered. Lives being lost due to corruption. And kids are dying day in and day out. As I'm talking to you right now, Congo, people are dying. It's not just in Congo. Let us begin to wake up. Let us begin to start thinking. Because the brain is meant for thinking. The brain is meant for education. The brain is meant for upliftment. The brain is meant for development. The brain is meant for progress. Until we understand the power of the brain, we're going to be kept where we are and accept anything that comes our way. Without much ado, I just want to end here. And I want to believe that you and I are going to open our eyes the more, our eyes of understanding. We're going to open up the eyes of our brains, our minds, and begin to see things differently so we can confront this cancer of corruption. It's not by fighting physically, but by fighting it mentally. That is where it starts from. And so please share the video. Please invite friends, family, loved ones to be a part of this discussion, because that is the only way we can empower ourselves. We can enlighten ourselves to be able to deal with this cancer on the continent of Africa. Thank you for listening. Once again, my name is Nana Osei Bonsu Jr. of Africa International Organization and Certo Leadership International. And I'm glad you invested your time into Leadership Academy by being a part of it. Same time next week, we are going to be here to continue the discussion of the effects of corruption and corruption, confronting corruption on the continent of Africa. Thank you once more for your time. And hopefully you share the video, you invite friends, loved ones, and next week we'll have a fruitful discussion. You have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend. See you next week. Bye-bye.